We know dress and material culture history mainly through the elites. Our museums are filled with objects that used to belong to rich people, and they left a lot of documentation behind. But we were instead very interested in looking at what happened just among the very ordinary people, and how this could change our understanding of our fashion history. Artisans and local shopkeepers that we are studying were a very lively group of people in early modern cities and countryside. They produced all sorts of objects like paintings and furniture, and they also sold products like food or provided services such as barbering. When historians usually study dress and fashion, we are used to looking at particular types of documents such as archival records or visual images or texts about garments. But these reveal very little about how these textile objects were actually made, or what it felt to wear them, what it felt to touch them, and what sounds these materials made when people wore them. So we have held several workshops where we have tried early modern techniques. We have used 16th century recipes, for example, to try to reconstruct the colors that we find in our archival records. We have also tried many types of imitative techniques to understand how, for example, pearls or expensive fabrics were created by using cheaper materials. And then we have carried out 2 commissions for historical reconstructions.
A doublet is an upper body garment worn by most men and some women across the social spectrum, so from the elites to everyday working people. In English, the word doublet refers to their double or often multiple layers. So it's quite a structured and sculptural garment made by tailors. So this doublet was owned by Francesco Ristori. He died in 1631 in Florence, where he worked as a water seller. He was probably carrying water to different houses or perhaps selling it by the cup on the street. So people in his neighborhood probably knew who he was. He was well recognized, and maybe that's why it was important to him to have a very fashionable appearance. And the doublet was described amongst about 150 other items of clothing belonging not just to him, but to his wife and children. It says Francesco owned a doublet of black, stamped Mikado, and it was nasty. So it was in quite a bad condition when he died. But some of these descriptive words in Francesco's inventory were very exciting to us. We decided this would be a really good candidate for reconstruction. Black is a very difficult color to achieve in the period. To get a true black using natural dyestuffs required a huge amount of skill from a dyer and excellent materials. Black is quite an expensive color, and that's quite notable when an artisan has black in his garments. Secondly, Mikado seems to mean a kind of mock velvet. Mock in the sense that it's not woven with silk like most velvet is, but it is woven with the structure of velvet. They would use wool or linen or hemp in order to achieve that plush effect, but for much less cost of materials. And then after a very plain velvet has been woven, you can take a hot stamp and simply push the pattern into the surface of the pile. And this creates the effect of a woven pattern, but for far less money and far more quickly and effectively. So we worked with the School of Historical Dress in London, who have a whole team of skilled makers who work with them to make this doublet, really from the fibers up. A doublet is an incredibly complex garment to make, and while throughout the process we have been able to witness all of these really innovative pattern cutting techniques, inner lining materials, and negotiations that tailors were making to really sculpt this garment into a fashionable silhouette. And an animation can really make all of these processes visible, even to somebody without the hands-on skills that we've been able to develop on the Refashioning project.
We started to think how we could meaningfully engage general public in cultural historical research. One type of stocking we are recreating is this coarse artisan stocking, which is based on extant findings from Copenhagen. And those stockings are knitted by our volunteer knitters without any instructions or patterns. This allows us to study what kind of knowledge a knitter needs to have in order to create these artisan stockings that could have been made at home during the period. The second stocking we are recreating is actually based on the first written instructions for a knitted stocking from early 17th century. We wanted to find out what kind of results you get when you're just following these early modern instructions. The most ambitious reconstruction in our citizen science project is the Turku stocking. This Turku stocking is a finely knit silk stocking. Its modern day color is dull brown and it has beautiful stitch decorations. And it's clearly been a luxury item during its own period. Only nobles and more well-to-do citizens could afford these kinds of stockings. In order to recreate the stocking, we needed to find the right kind of yarn to match the fiber analysis that we made. We took a silk course in southern Italy in Calabria. We learned how to process silk from the cocoons in a traditional way. And after we understood this process better, we commissioned a special batch of hand-reeled traditional silk from Bombyx-Mori silkworms. We found out that the original color of the stocking was black. Traditionally, black had been dyed with combination of red and blue color, but this stocking was dyed black using alder bark and oak galls. We dye one of the stockings black to reconstruct the original stocking, but we also dye them in other fashionable colors such as fustic, cochineal and Brazil wood. We discovered that it takes around 200 hours for one of our knitters to finish one stocking. And it's interesting to think about how different the process must have been and how different it must have felt for the knitters during the early modern period when these stockings were created in harsh conditions in workshops who often employed children. I had an opportunity to try the stocking myself once it had been degummed and transformed into this luxurious, soft and smooth stocking. And I have to say, I've never tried anything as luxurious in my life, but it really made me contemplate what the bodily pleasure was in connection with the work that has been put into the stocking. Already in early modern period, the contemporaries were thinking about these issues. For example, one writer asked in connection to pearls, was the reason that the people desired them so much that they came from another world, from Americas, or was it actually because they were costing human lives? And I was really reflecting that when I was wearing this stocking and thinking about those children that had been knitting these stockings during the period.
We have been able to discover many types of things about textiles and dress items that cannot be found in history books. There's still a lot to discover, and we hope that our project can inspire other people to do some more experimentation and develop further these methods of historical reconstruction and material research on dress.